First, I am so privileged and so honored and so excited that my voice might also flounder because I'm really excited to share this dais with Joost, Bertrand. Is that the correct pronunciation? Thank you for teaching me French. I learned French in one day. And Sree. And I was also told to say that there's an investor, there's a corporate person from business intelligence, and there's a tech person. So this really makes it very, very conducive. Just 1 minute for me. I have been in the fintech segment for about 20 years. I've driven tier 1 organizations in terms of transformation, and I'm pivoting to sustainability, so need all your good wishes to make sure that my sustainability pivot is successful. So over to Joost to introduce himself.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lakshmi, and thanks for the invitation, being here today. So very short, as promised, an introduction. So my name is Joost Bilkes. I'm the managing partner for Double Delta. 10 years ago, we started Impact Investment Fund Series for Credit Suisse and UAB, so it's a partnership. And it recently spun off. As you know, Credit Suisse is now part of UBS. So what we did 10 years ago, we raised money from private banking clients, in total $155 million. And we invested it across the region in emerging Asia in things like access to education, healthcare, but we also invested a lot in agriculture, and their adaptation was a key topic we looked at and invested in, and I can share a bit more about that later, as well as mitigation, so access to energy for low-income families across emerging markets. So those are broadly the topics. Hopefully we can talk a bit more about some of the examples and how that worked and how that didn't work. Thank you.
Thank you. So what you take away is 155 million, small amounts, nothing very difficult to digest. You take in impact investment, and also you take in some very relevant industrial credentials. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Bertrand. So as you can tell from my quaint first name and my thick accent, I'm French. I work for S&P, where I started a sustainable finance team about 5 years ago. So before I was doing for many years very boring things like credit ratings, and then I had a fresh start. So I think it's maybe a message of hope, for you today, regardless of your intellectual capabilities, and if you're just engulfed in a boring job, you can always pivot to sustainability if the opportunity is right. And there are 6 of us across Asia working with many clients on very different sustainability issues, what we can discuss later on.
So French, SDG 17 collaboration. Then you have pivot, which is very good for all our careers. And then you have all the products from a business intelligence point of view. So somebody you should follow. He's also a speaker and extremely modest, as I can see, because his original script for introduction was fancier. So we'll try and get that out from him. For yourself.
Okay, my name is Sreekumar. I work for SAP. Maybe many of you know SAP as an ERP company, and maybe some of you already use SAP software. So I represent SAP Singapore, and I am responsible for heading the sustainability business for SAP's Asia Pacific region. So in Singapore for 12 years, I've been living in Singapore for 12 years, and since 3 to 4 years, we are strongly focusing on sustainability, both as a company which practices sustainability and also as a company which helps other organizations like you to achieve your sustainability ambitions. Yeah.
Okay. SAP, sustainability technology. So we'll stay with you, Sree, and now we'll just go to the financing, the low carbon. And if you could just give us 1 or 2 very specific successes that you've seen in this area, very specific, so they can take it and then research and then study it.
Yeah. So, well, my definition of sustainability and transitioning to low carbon sustainability, in 2 words, it is net zero decarbonization. Okay, so net zero decarbonization is one of the main trend or one of the main ambitions that every organization is focusing on. And I can share with you some good success stories that as a tech company, we have been involved in helping some big conglomerates in ASEAN region to improve their decarbonization targets. Yeah. So as a company, as an organization, you may be required to improve your own ESG performances. As a company, you may be required to fund other companies for their ESG performances. So you could play both hats. In both of these cases, the least common denominator is decarbonization. So a tech platform or a tech company is very critical to this,
Shri, I
behavior.
think specific. What is right? Really specific. What have you seen? What excites you in terms of where your success is in terms of financing the?
Yeah. So as I said, I have seen success. We just went through helping one of the big organizations to measure some of their key ESG performances, because most of the companies here in Singapore and also the ASEAN, they focus mainly on decarbonization, whether it is scope 1 or scope 2 or scope 3, corporate emissions, right? So it's very important for companies to have a platform to help monitor all these information, because today the problem here is the cost of data collection. ESG data collection is a very complex topic to discuss. So a platform is very critical, and very recently we have gone live with SAP as a technology platform to help one of the leading companies to achieve some of their decarbonization targets in ASEAN region. And this, we believe, will pave the way for many other companies in Singapore and also other regions to follow the path and also help in their ESG transformation initiatives.
Thank you. So there's measurement, there's decarbonization in terms of specificity. There's also a use case, and I'm sure if you grab Sri during one of the sessions, he will give you some more insights. So moving on to Bertrand, please give us your perspective on transition, on green, and some specific cases that you are seeing.
Yeah, sure. I think the straight and very concise answer would be we don't see that many cases. We did a macro study of 7,000 companies, across the region, and we realized that only 12% of them have net zero targets. So that's 50% less than what you see globally. And similarly, only 30% of companies have just a form of emissions reduction targets, compared, for instance, to 60% in Europe. So clearly, Asia-Pac is lagging. And to me, this is where I see the opportunity from a pure corporate standpoint. There is a real premium to being a pioneer and a forerunner. I could really think about two companies, to me, that stand out. They are not the only one, but they are just the one I'm thinking of. First one would be city development here. And I think, they are hosting us today, but this is not the reason why I'm mentioning them. They have ingrained sustainability and transition so much in their strategy that it has becoming a core part of their branding and a key differentiator. On a hard-to-abate sector, elsewhere in the region, I'm thinking about Fortescue Metals, the iron ore producer out of Australia. They were probably, or at least the only company I know of, who released a net zero roadmap maybe 3 years ago, with different articulated stages. And so those two companies, since they've been seen, and for good reasons, as foreigners, innovators, being bold and brave, it has become, I think, a key differentiator in their broad branding strategy, I would say. So to me, success in a region that is not doing that much is just to do something and to let people know about it. So it's really about educating, your stakeholders on how you've set a given target, what it takes to reach it, because in isolation, a target is just meaningless, without its context.
This is heavy, yeah? Very specific, thank you. There's CDL. My endorsement as well. I think I've heard enough of CDL in only positive terms. Their sustainability report, I think, is the 17th edition. And all of you all who want a very quick, crash, easy course, read one of their sustainability reports. You would have everything covered there. You'll have to give me the chemical name again, Fortescue.
Q metals.
My French is getting better. Yeah.
Or maybe my English is not that good because you didn't pick up the name.
Okay, Fortescue. So, Terence, are you here still with us? So you've gone for the workshop. He's left, okay. Thibaut, you're here? Yes. Okay. So, the numbers that we heard about, right? So you take the bonuses of the CEOs and all the CXOs, and I think the money is there. This is the right sector. It's a hard to abate sector. So if they are investing in decarbonization, which is the finance, and in low energy transition, that's absolutely the right way to do, because they know the processes, they know their workflows, they know the data, and they know how to be efficient. And they also know how to make money on the equity stock market. So my take is we don't get overwhelmed with the big numbers. We support in whatever way we can the corporates to do the right thing, buy their stocks if their stocks are attractive on the market. Over to you. And I think they've covered a few questions, so we can combine a few areas. One is probably trends, opportunities, spaces, and any solutions that come into your mind, though we'll take solutions a little later, but please talk about trends, spaces, and opportunities.
Okay, so I think one thing, just from a top level point of view, so I think these two gentlemen are talking, how can we transition the large corporates?
Yes.
So we are putting money kind of from the bottom up into smaller companies that can scale up through technology in sectors like agri, where it's adaptation or mitigation, if it is, rooftop solar, etc. So in terms of,
yes.
I think that's important for the discussion. So, and both needs to happen. We have to, and they're also linked because, for example, we're in Thailand in agri, and we develop a tool for hundreds of thousands of farmers to actually map them out, to map their land, map what they're doing, try to find ways that they emit less in their processes, etc. But this data platform links through all the way to the corporates because they want to know what's happening on the ground, right. And they made all the top level commitments and find it very hard to get that data and get that confirmation. I mean, Sri, that's your daily challenge probably. Yeah. But anyway, so to your point in terms of trends, so I think two key things, so 2 weeks ago I was at the GIN, the Global Impact Investment Network, so our fund is called an Impact Investment Fund. And one of the key things that struck me is that 90% of all the world's climate finance goes towards mitigation, one, and I think for Asia, adaptation is much more important. If I look at all the investments we're doing, it's already happening. Farmers having less yield, so we have, for example, higher salt levels in the Mekong Delta, so we invested in a company that has salinity buoys that measure salt level and only irrigates when the tidal fluctuation is more or less, depending, and then it irrigates rice paddies, for example. Another one is and this is more on the insecticide. So there's different plagues impacting agricultural communities across emerging Asia in terms of pests because of climate change. The one that is most painful, and I don't know if there's any agri specialists in the room, but is the brown plant hopper. So the brown plant hopper is eating all the rice paddies, etc. So we have invested in a company that has this technology whereby there's a little box standing in different parts on paddies, and it counts the insects that fly through it or crawl through it, etc. And therefore you can actually see when the pest is peaking and what you can do. So you can incorporate natural predators, and then you don't have to use pesticides. So the solution is absolutely amazing. And we have in Dong Tap province, so one of the big provinces in the Mekong area, one of the poorest regions in Vietnam, we have implemented that across the Mekong area. So that's, again, another example of adaptation. So a lot of money going towards mitigation, but in Asia, adaptation is needed. The second key thing, which is also very worrying, You told me in the beginning I shouldn't talk about problems and challenges. So I'll tell you what the solution is as well. But so 15% of the money goes to emerging markets. 15% of climate finance being made available and the commitments being made. But actually, most of the money should go towards emerging markets. And Asia being really important. More than 50% of manufacturing output is Asia. All the polluted rivers are here. Or the quality of air across cities is dramatically terrible. So this is where money needs to go towards. Most of even look at Southeast Asia, transition of your power generation across countries need to happen. So this is where money needs to go to. Is only a small fraction. For impact investing, it's no better. So we saw that trend actually changing. People get more risk averse and pulling money out of emerging markets at the moment, specifically if you look at private capital. So that's something that negatively impacts us. And I saw that 2 weeks ago when we were in Europe. Now, and therefore, I said earlier, I spoke shortly about, for example, rooftop solar. So there are enough solutions. So we are investing in these type of businesses where you can have enormous mitigation impacts across emerging markets. And the simple one is, if you think about it, where there's been enormous government, research institutions, NGO investments in coming up with innovation and technologies that work. If you really want to make a huge impact, you have to implement them in China or in India or across Southeast Asia. You have to bring that scale. It's great that in I don't know if there's any Norwegians in the room, but if there's 2 million Norwegians on an electric scooter, imagine that the whole of India is on an electric scooter now, and they can easily produce it even better. So that's what we're looking at as well. So rooftop solar across Vietnam, we're now there's a lot of large infra and structural investment into solar, but now it comes to the point like, okay, how can we further grow in Vietnam? So we're looking at all the rooftops, and people don't have the money to install it. So that's what we're doing. We invest in a company, which is a platform. It gives a small loan. It immediately implements the solar panels on the roof, and the saving on the electricity bill is so large that it's more than the regular payment to pay down your loan over a period of 4 years for these small businesses. So you go there, you install it, and they make money. And you have converted them to clean energy. So anyways, that's one. So that's a hopeful. Sorry, yeah.
He said so
We're all
much.
quite
How do I
negative, I feel.
summarize? Any volunteers to summarize it for all of us? I mean, there's such a wealth of knowledge. So anybody wants to put up their hand and summarize? Otherwise, you all will have to bear with my summary, which is nowhere close to what he said. So let me try. Any volunteers to replay?
Maybe don't summarize.
No, I should and I must and I will. So, do you have these case studies on your website, the Double Delta, the agriculture one, the solar one in Vietnam, so that at least we can tell the audience to do some post-panel homework?
Yeah, no, for sure. We have a lot of cases on our website. There's also, we actually guest lecture at the INSEAD and other universities, St. Cullen University, and go through a lot of these cases. And if you can't find it on the website, just drop us an email.
Yes, so please follow Joost on LinkedIn. Please drop him a note, all of y'all, and I have the names, so please drop him a note and ask for the case studies. But on a serious note, I definitely took away agriculture. I took away the structure and the workflow of solar panels and the monetization. So coming back to the topic, these are probably at a regional level. I think he made that very clear that there's some regionalization that's required. But then you can see the unlocking of finance. So this narrative that he told us with very specific areas. And also the education bit. So Joost does guest lectures in many universities, especially in SUD. So you can see it all coming together in terms of the impact investment, in terms of spreading the knowledge, and in terms of having information available. I'd like to go to Bertrand and check with you, some of the constraints that he did touch upon, right? Maybe you want to build on them, and maybe you also want to give your side of the solutioning, as well as something that is, that you're looking at actively in terms of, okay, there's a challenge, there's a constraint, but here's a solution. So can you just walk us through your thoughts?
If any, yes. I think the main challenge, and this is maybe why it's difficult to attract funding, is uncertain impact. I mean, for many fund providers, This is what Sri was talking about, you know, the difficulty to have some quality data available.
Oh, yes.
And also the difficulty to be innovative.
Okay.
Because if you are looking at what banks and investors have been essentially financing, we are talking about very proven technologies. We are talking about solar panels, we are talking about wind turbines, energy efficiency projects, EV charging stations, EV production, and so forth and so on. So those are good because they contribute directly to climate mitigations and through the reduction in carbon emissions, but they are not really enough. So they account for give or take 75%, I think, of sustainable funding, but to some extent it's at the expense of other projects which are essential, like agriculture. I would totally agree with Joost. All the more because many countries want to develop biofuels, and this is where agriculture has a key role to play as well. So my advice, I don't know whether it's an advice, but what I notice is the lack of quality data may deter investment and funding appetite.
I think she gave you that point, right, to make sure that we get to the data question. So on the data question, we've all heard data is a challenge. We know it ad nauseum. We also know that data is not there. And if it's there, people don't know how to use it. But SAP also has unique credentials of building a cohesive story. So while Bertrand brought up the data issue and also talked about some specific areas in terms of challenges, data seems to be the solution, but data is also the problem. So can you give us your take on how the problem becomes a solution?
So, thanks to both. Okay, we have a problem at hand, data, right? Now, that's why SAP is one of the companies who started to build a platform to help organizations, solve these sustainability challenges 2 to 3 years ago. And we have a concept called as, ERP-centric sustainability. So if you look at sustainability traditionally, right, you have business processes running on one side of the house, and sustainability is always treated as a separate charter, a separate team working on it and, trying to run through hours and hours of midnight oil to collect the data and so on. But if you look at it in a different perspective, right, your business process already has a lot of data that is required to help your sustainability goals. So we as SAP wanted to establish a behavior where we rely on the ERP, your enterprise resource planning business processes itself, to get as much as data that is required for sustainability. So instead of you running around it, you already have it. Now, this is a famous quote.
Any innovation that you're seeing?
Yes. I'm coming to that. So this is a famous saying that we always say that, you should not think sustainability as a separate initiative of the company. In fact, if you want to improve, if an organization wants to improve their sustainability, figures or your ESG performances, the underlying business processes has to be changed. Because, sustainability and business processes, to me, in my opinion, are like the blood running through your body, right? You need blood to survive. You need blood to live. Likewise, you need a sustainable business processes to give life to your organization. So you have to take all measures in place to improve your business processes. Once your business processes improves, your sustainability automatically improves, right? So that is why we emphasize a lot on improve the business processes, get the data that is required for sustainability at the business process layer itself, so that you can extract the data at will at any time and generate whatever is required for both your internal and external disclosures. Now, this is the specific case. I wanted to be very specific here. So, in my earlier talk, I talked about one organization, and actually that organization is also in Thailand, where, it's one of, again, it's an agri-industry, by the way, because you mentioned about agri-industry a lot. So we are one of the leading agri-food manufacturers in Thailand, which is part of CP Group, who actually embraced SAP technology, and they use this technology to extract the data from the underlying ERP business process layer and all the systems, and measure all their various emissions related to scope 1, 2, and 3, right? So my vision, or our thought process future is that ERP centric sustainability, or I would say business process centric sustainability, would be the mantra to going forward.
Yeah, I agree. No need to summarize this. Very, very, very well said. Are you hiring? Do you have jobs?
Yes. I am hiring. We wanted to expand the market. So, as I said, Thailand is just an opener, but we are closely working with many organizations in Singapore and other ASEAN regions to get more and more organizations embrace sustainability technology. Yeah.
So any one of you all want to move from that side to this side, do low carbon transition financing and want a job, please speak to Sreekumar. Are you hiring?
I hope that we may well be hiring at some point next year. The reality is that it's a complicated market, frankly, for services providers, because, you know, as usual, customers, they want the service, they're a bit reluctant to pay for it. I mean, we are all the same, right? So it's a complicated market, I would say, but it's a market that is also growing, because I think many companies understand that they need some technical help, because at the end of the day, sustainability is becoming increasingly technical. And so many companies, and that's the key challenge, especially for small and medium enterprises. They may not have, the internal capabilities for good reasons to get started on their sustainability journey.
I think hiring is important. Thank you for the positive information. Are you hiring?
So before hiring, so one thing on Sri's thing, I was just thinking, no, but so the one thing maybe so what's the difference between a small company kind of gathering data and trying to find a commercial case around it? Then there is a business case behind the data. Now, for a lot of large companies, it's probably one of your challenges as well, that you have to make them see there is a commercial case in collecting data, no? So, and again, the Thailand thing is interesting. So for us as well, so we're collecting all this data from all these farmers, and therefore, because there's so many small farmers and the large production plants and mills, they are huge overcapacity in Thailand. So actually they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the data so they can better manage their own supply chain. So that's a really kind of, interesting way to think about it. Anyway.
Yeah. No, so maybe
Wait.
Okay.
Are you hiring?
Yeah, so with investment funds, it's a bit, so you raise money, then you invest the money, then you have to divest, and you raise the next fund. So hopefully we'll raise the next fund next year, and then we'll be hiring again. So it's a wave. It's a wave.
Anyone with checkbook here for investments?
Yeah,
so
exactly,
some others can get hired.
Yeah, if we raise today,
please
then
meet
you're
him.
hired. Yeah.
Yes, Sri. Kripa, brief.
So having said all this, right? If I flip this angle to more finance, okay, maybe one comment is that there are many financial executives in the room today. Some of you may be planning for 2025 already, okay, and some of you may be also thinking what I should do in my company to make this transition to low carbon, right? Now, there might be two groups of people in this room today. Some of you may be coming from an organization who wants to do some initiatives to achieve your targets. There could be some other groups of people in the room who are like lenders, who wants to give money to other companies to achieve their targets, right? So for both of you, for both these parties in the room, getting the right amount of data is very important. For the organization, let's say if I put the hat of a chief financial officer, for 2025, you may come to my table and put 5 files with me. I want to do project A, project B, project C, D, and E, right? But as a CFO, which should I approve? What should I approve? Okay, which project, if executed, will achieve my decarb targets, right? So there is always this, information required by the top executives of the company. What is the return Okay, which project will be successful? What is the cost of executing the project, and what is the expected decarbonization downtrend that I can get for my company, right? So at the end of the day, it all boils down to money. It all boils down to the cost and the return on sustainability. If I talk from the organization CFO perspective, now flipping to the other group of people in the room who are lending money. Okay, it's like a pure investment company lending money to other organizations. They also require equal amount of information to lend money to the organization's credential, right? What are their ESG goals and parameters? So both these type of data points, both these kind of dashboards are very essential for both parties. And hence, I would say this tech is going to play a role, not just for large enterprises. Of course, they can afford, but I think this is also applicable to small and medium enterprises as well, maybe in a lighter, lighter mode, yeah.
So two lenses. One is the CFO's lens with all the due diligence on the business case, and the other one is rational for the investors to put in the money, and then tech is the conduit. Okay, thank you, got it. Impact and regulations. I thought you had to make people laugh, not you laugh yourself, but okay. But impact and regulations for you. Is there something that you're seeing that's particularly an enabler? And very briefly, of course, or from a regulation point of view, you think something might slow down your pace specific to financing the transition?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So, so maybe two comments. So one is, I'm all for transparency and regulation, trying to kind of guide the market. It also becomes easier for players to, live by the rules and et cetera. So I was actually, the whole Article 6 thing that was approved yesterday, we heard, is I think quite interesting. But if I look really specifically at my day-to-day work, how it has impacted me so far, it's negatively.
Okay.
And the reason is, so for example, we are invested in the largest, not when we invested, but it is now the largest education platform in Southeast Asia. It helps primary school kids with learning journeys on the mobile phone. There are 25 million kids. They live in Indonesia. They charge their phone on the grid, and the grid is powered by coal. Okay. So my investor in Europe is telling me, Joost, we're impact in Article 9, you have to report. So the SFDR rules in Europe, you have to report on these type of, on scope 3 and your emissions. So now I'm reporting that 25 million people in my company are emitting, coal or burning coal and emitting, which is terrible. I was trying to solve this primary school kid problem, and now, so that's a kind of a negative impact. And now I'm being seen as like this, So fortunately, we also have, of course, like the rooftop solar, etc., where we have a positive outcome. But it's just a lot of extra work. So I would ask regulators to look at materiality.
Okay. If you buy his reports from S&P, you think your problem would be solved? Because he has a lot of intelligence reports on regulation and complex products.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so please,
subscription
I got for you. Okay, so we have question time. It's ask us anything, we know everything. So please ask us. And all those who've got planted questions, please wake up because,
Anybody have a question? Okay, I see one.
Thank you. I want to see sort of the panel's view around a lot of talk around transition risk, especially for mentioned agri, rice growing, for example, transition, and from a financing standpoint, how to handle the mismatch in timing of typical financial instruments versus the longer term transition in terms of to get that and the whole thing around transition credits.
Can we all answer it? Yeah. Okay. Is there another question? I just want to take it, see if there's synergies, then we'll just bring it all together.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is mostly related to the investment side. So I understand the panel actually has described two different climate solutions, the renewable energy as well as the agri-tech. So between the different climate solutions and sectors like the carbon capture, agri-tech, and renewable energy, which do you think has the most promise in terms of return and impact?
Okay. Hi. Intelligence reports. We'll go first. Thank you for the two wonderful questions.
Just one more question. if
Yeah.
I
Oh,
can.
sure. Okay.
So, we spoke about agri-tech and renewables. What about insurance, insurtech, providing resilience to some of the ventures which are impacted by climate?
Can we please have your name?
Rahul.
Hi, Rahul. Your name? Terence. Vincent. Okay. Thank you, Vincent, Rahul, and Terence. Would you like to take all three together?
I don't know. Okay. Of course. I think, okay, if we take a step back with transition, the issue is that of definition, right? Because if you're taking the dictionary, it's just a change from one given state to a different state, right? But it's not giving you any indication of the magnitude of the change, nor its timeline. And this is an issue for fund providers because typically transition projects are not green. So as a fund provider, you're facing a potential stigma of, financing projects which technically are not green. So my take on it is that fund providers, they need comfort on a given company's transition roadmap. It may well be net zero, but at the end of the day, net zero today, I think it's not really credible because many technologies are a bit unproven or uneconomical, right? But at least you should get comfort that a given company is trying its best try to decarbonize its operations. Briefly on technology, I'm sure that my co-panelists have views as well. Power in Asia, it's 80% of the emissions, of the region's emissions. So that, I think, quite an eloquent number. You have many facets of technologies. Unfortunately, all the carbon capture, storage, and potential utilizations, they face technological hurdles. They are not really economical as well. So I would see personally growing the renewable generation capacity as the main driver of decarbonization, because at the end of the day, power consumption is still growing, right, in this part of the world. So I don't think that we see any energy transition in APAC. It's more a renewable energy addition addressing the incremental needs. We'll probably stop there to leave some time to
I think
introduce.
very well said. Anybody who needs another, who's doing a speaker slot on this topic, please remember, transition is not green. Excellent. I think I will clap for you for that. What about Sri? So there are three areas, right? There is transition, there's the versus which power versus what, and there's insurtech. So if you can just start with insurtech first, that'll be great. Is that right, Rahul? Insurance.
So I think my take on this, because there are three topics, three types of investments described here: insurtech, and then Trent was talking about renewable energy, solar, yeah, and Karen was talking about the transition risk, yeah. So my take on this is, again, depending upon which side of the ecosystem I'm looking at. Let's say if I'm looking at from a use perspective, like an investor perspective, then probably there could be decisions made on which of these investments are going to give me the highest, highest.
Insurance, this is insurance?
Insurance, yeah.
Highest return.
No,
So you're binding the two.
I'm trying to evaluate the two, insurance versus renewable energy, right? Because both have its own merits, and from an investor hat, there are certain parameters that I as an investor may look at to decide which one would give me the highest ROE and ROCE. Okay, whereas if I flip the hat to an organization perspective, like I'm an organization, I want to improve my ESG goals and which projects I should undertake, right? Whether I should put my bet on renewable energy, like converting all my equipments to solar, or convert all my stuff to EV. There could be, again, as I said before, a project analysis has to be carried out, because each project that I have to undertake carries its own cost and its own NPV, the net present values. I would not say one is better for the other, because unless you do a proper project analysis, a project cost calculations, and a return analysis, you as an organization may not really know which one suits you at the end of the day, right? But from an investor angle, I think today, if I'm not mistaken, renewable energy is one of the hot, sought out investments in the market. Yeah, solar energy is one of the booming area for sustainable finance. So I would say 70 to 80% of the people may align with the view that renewable energy may be giving me, higher returns in a shorter time. Yeah, whereas InsurTech maybe also a possible option for a similar return, maybe over a longer time. So it's about the time duration the investor is looking at on what type of investments he would like to put it into.
Okay, so time duration, thank you, and also the specific metrics that you gave, which is very important for any capital case, ROE, ROC. Also, recently I heard that some of these metrics are undergoing a change, because the way we measure the business case in traditional metrics doesn't really count the dependencies on nature and climate, so that's undergoing some change, as I hear. I thought for transition, InsurTech, and renewable energy, I probably will do a rapid fire with Joost, and then in a yes or no, we can probably get the answers, and then if it's not covered, you can give your piece. So in terms of transition, are we there? Are we not? Are we on the journey? Is the journey good or bad? Rapid fire. Very simple.
The numbers show. The numbers show that I think we're not there. No, I mean that. Yeah.
Not there. That rapid. Where's the fire?
Yeah, exactly. Where's
So.
No, I think, I mean, so this is transition and how we're doing and stuff like that. So Vincent, to your point, I think transition risk. So if you can assess it. So when I was head of sustainability for Credit Suisse, so we looked at mentioning asset managers. So the asset managers that find material data points within sectors that point out, hey, this is a material risk. This is going to cost you money in the medium term. They will allocate their portfolio such that they benefit from that knowledge. And I think that's the time they will incorporate the time. And so I don't know your background and where you work. But yeah, there are, I can give you offline 5 asset managers that have huge teams looking at, weather patterns. So the Nordea with the Vale problem was great. Nordea underweight Vale in their portfolios because of weather pattern changes when the dam break in Brazil a couple of years ago hugely outperformed. So that was a material data point, and thinking about transition, what the costs are and when is it time to invest, etc. And who's doing that the right way. Sorry.
No, very good. Thank you. So materiality begets finance and finance begets materiality. Is that a nutshell? In terms of you have to have material data for you to get in the finance.
Yeah, so every time.
And then finance will be given if you have the materiality metrics. And that kind of covers the transition when we are not there yet. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, so the commercial case is always the thing that we need to work out.
Okay.
So insurance tech as well. So I think for the last 2 decades, we're doing CAT bonds, catastrophe bonds for developed markets. But how you're talking about resilience in emerging markets for small companies and small farmers, that's a really good question, Rahul. It's like we need to find an economic model, commercial model that works. At the moment, I don't know if you know one, let me know. I've looked at many, just too costly for a small farmer. So yeah, I mean, that's the challenge. The commercial case for all of these issues.
So insurance follows the commercial case. Joost, can you also just give us your voice bite, please, on the renewable energy? Which one is better? I heard carbon capture. I heard solar. And Terence, what was your other third third piece, solar, carbon capture, and agri-tech. So in terms of
what
one
pays
versus
off?
the other, yeah.
Yeah,
Any
so-
preferences, any favorites?
Yeah, so I was thinking, so to Bertrand's point, so in Asia, the 80% power. So I think from a top level infrastructure investment, so if there is government support, long take, off take, feed in, tariff, whatever, then you can make money into that piece of the transition on the infrastructure side, I would think. But from the bottom up, looking at small businesses, agri is really tough. I mean, we're doing it, but it's like, it's really tough. But if you have technology that sits in developed markets working really well, and it's commercially cheaper than whatever extracting, power generation from coal, it's cheaper. It works better. Then, it needs less maintenance. Then it works, and then it's actually a good investment to roll out. The investment we're doing in Vietnam is super, super interested, and that's super interesting from a commercial point of view. And that's without any feed-in tariffs. And they're now talking about starting feed-in tariffs for rooftop solar, which would, I'll stop working. No, I'm joking.
So then they'll have to hire you. Okay,
Investors
so
will stop working soon.
no, just a minute. I want to still get some things done because after listening to this, I have some questions. So financing the low carbon transition, we had a question on transition, we had a question on renewable energy, we had a question on insurance. So the way I see it is Singapore's done a great job, and not because I live in Singapore for many years, but there is a taxonomy which has really reached its pioneer influence, and lots of countries are incorporating that taxonomy. That defines transition very, very clearly in terms of what is green and brown. To that, it also for every segment, be it agri-tech, be it carbon capture or solar, there are specific criteria, specific measurements, metrics, and specific pathways. And once these are in place, we believe as part of the financing, the insurance will flow. At least I believe, I'll let them speak for themselves, the insurance will flow. So in these three questions, we actually had the panel discussion wrapped up very nicely. I am told I have one more question. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Zian here. Yeah, I totally agree with you that the transition finance is not green. So you can't go from, let's say, for example, a brown sector to immediately to become a green. So for us, we know that for the GSF, Green Sustainable Finance, right, they are guided by the LSTA. So in this Asia taxonomy recently that I saw, there is this amber and there's this green, and I think a lot of financial institutions, they are also looking at what cannot be financed in this green sustainable finance to be financed under this transition finance. And then they mention a lot of activities under the amber activities. So, of course, our worries is also on the greenwashing part. So how can financial institutions, make good use of this Asia taxonomy and how to avoid greenwashing?
I can take it.
No, it's a great question. Taxonomies, to me, they have their beauty and their limitations as well. The beauty is, this traffic light system, so it's quite clear, right? It's green, amber, or it's red. But at the end of the day, they are focusing on projects, right? So they are not covering the broader sustainability strategy. And I believe that in the market today, there is many different, assessments on how green projects are. S&P, among other organizations, provides this kind of services. There is not really, widespread, well understood assessment on transition strategy. And to me, so we have the taxonomies, which are a major breakthrough. Singapore, ASEAN, the EU taxonomy, and the likes. But what is missing is really kind of connection between, to me, at least I could be wrong, or you're most welcome to disagree with me, but between the company itself, and what it's all about, what its strategic aspirations are, and the projects. which remains quite topical and which, at the end of the day, may well cover a very small portion of a given company's earnings, right? So, talking with investors, with banks, it seems that what they want to get is a third-party assessment on the credibility of a given transition story. And actually, I don't really necessarily like the term transition. Maybe just decarbonization. It's just probably much more practical.
Thank you. I had 2 questions, and I don't want to miss them, so I'll just throw it out, and then I'll take yours. So you were at another country recently talking about impact investment verification and stakeholder. Please just give us, because we all are so Singapore-based, if you could just tell us the country that you were and you did some conversations, you shared some nuggets, if you could just bring it for our audience.
Okay, so it was Sri Lanka, so which is where the roots of Lakshmi are. So that's probably the reason she's bringing it up. But no, you're absolutely right. So that was before the election. I think in September they had this was before the election. So yeah, you know much better what the current state is. But at the time there was quite a lot of hope. There was hope around renegotiating the IMF lending platform, etc. And there was a lot of talk about, so how are we going to invest new money? What are the things we should focus on as a country? What is strategically smart? And can we, kind of rebuilding the country and helping and supporting sectors, can we do it in a way that we, two birds, one stone. So can we immediately target climate-related issues? And their 2 biggest one is agri and the apparel supply chain. So I spoke about deals that we did in other countries in Asia, in the apparel supply chain and in agri. So, and for example, apparel, that's a reseller platform with about 1 million female entrepreneurs reselling mostly apparel. So that's great. It gives them income and a livelihood, and they're coming all from low income families. These are Muslim women that are not kind of allowed or expected to work, etc. But on the backside of that, they're selling more hijabs and bed sheets and etc., and which are produced in Indonesia, which is done in not a very sustainable manner. But you can't expect a country in one go have 270 million people to go from not so sustainable to international standards, Nike, Adidas, etc. So where do you start, and how do you get the supply chain on board? How do you break it down? What are the opportunities? And again, so do reverse logistics on old bed sheets and make it feedstock for a chemical recycling plant for viscose. So it's something like that. Make a commercial case and then do it. So that was stuff that we discussed during so there was Red Climate Code Red, in Colombo, yeah.
So thank you. This is a different country bite, I'm sure we all appreciate. Before you put your hands together for a thunderous applause, which we will keep asking for till you do it, 1 second for AI. Sri. Just tell us where AI fits in.
Sure. So,
because the last time I did a panel, I said these questions were not asked, so I'm asking all the questions. Yeah. AI.
So, AI is one of the most booming topic of today, right? And not for that reason, but I think AI is also associated with sustainability now. Yeah. So with sustainability technology, AI is going to play a very important role. And one of the key use case that we as SAP has identified, and of course many customers have started to look forward to, is how you can automate your ESG report generation process using AI. Because today most of your company...
one question that we want, and I'm deliberately interrupting, not sorry. What is your AI budget? Percentage. I think we all want some spice, yeah. What is your 10%, 5 million, 10 million?
Maybe more than that.
More than that, okay.
Yeah.
So there is real investment. Put your hands together. Thunderous applause, please.
One more question.
Okay.
Hi, yes, sorry, I have one more question. I'm Anjali, and I work in the renewable energy sector in Southeast Asia. And I think that one challenge that we've been kind of hearing a lot is the fact that, unlike coal and gas industries where its capex requirements are low, but then the maintenance costs are high, right? whereas it's the reverse in renewable energy, where actually the capex is quite high. It's very top heavy. And that is a huge barrier to actually getting investing, so to getting funding. And so how are financial institutions actually evolving their return horizons to account for this, to account for the fact that actually maintenance costs are much lower, but the capex requirements are going to be high, and so there is that initial risk, especially for, like, let's say offshore wind, even solar, where capex can be more than 30%. The second question I have is that how are non-environmental factors being considered in risk assessments? So, for instance, beyond the decarbonization benefits, how are social factors, like communities that are affected, being considered in some of these assessments when investing? Yeah, thank you.
Shall I start? Okay. Great question. So on the first one, so let me take the example, because I completely agree with you. That's one of the challenges. So offshore wind. I don't know which Asian country specifically looking at, but in Asia, so solar, for example. So what we've done now is, so for this company I alluded to earlier, so it's a 4-year loan. So we do the initial payment, so we make the capital available, and we have insurance. So actually, because that's one of the issues as well. So you have a small enterprise, they have to pay a couple of $1,000. You provide the loan, immediately they have it on the roof. They're actually, over the last 10 years in Vietnam, actually power generated by the grid is going up every single year. So for them, they immediately have this cost-saving benefit. So actually on these smaller projects that are literally a couple of $1,000 for a small MSME, these are actually really commercially viable, interesting deals to do for us. And the longer term, you're right, but so if you don't have the insurance, that can be a problem. If there's one storm, and we know climate change is happening, there are more storms and bad things happening. So then you make this big investment, and as a small enterprise, you're down thousands of dollars, and you don't have any power anymore. So you have to get that insurance. Also, that's also linked to the insurance question earlier. So anyway, so those are things that we see that really, really work, and there's a commercial valuable case to overcome that. What we also see is that we are doing this because the banks are not doing it. So the banks are doing the larger renewable projects to feel comfortable about it, but the smaller ones, it's just too much money if you don't use tech and a tech-enabled platform to do the assessment of the payer and the loan and how it works and how you structure it. The banks cannot do it. So they are now starting to give loans to us to actually use that money for much smaller amounts, etc. And then your second point on ESG, so you're absolutely right. So depending on and this again from a fund and investor point of view, but so first of all, and it's any investment, you have your ESG framework, your ESMS in place for your fund, which is looking at all these aspects. So we're investing in nutritional supplements for infants in China. If these supplements are made by children's hands, then that's a problem, because we're solving this problem around anemia and stunting of children in China. But if the things are produced like ESG-wise not correct because they're made by kids, then that's a big problem. So we would always look at those two things, that you need to meet all requirements in a sense. Yeah.
I think that's all we have time for. Thank you. We did not. I think it's a nice, sobering note to end on, but I still feel that I hope you'll have taken insights, and that's about time.